Welcome to this video on board roles and responsibilities. This is part 2 of the 2 videos on the topic. My name is Scott Vaughn. I'm with Community Development Unit of Alberta Culture, Multiculturalism, and Status of Women. Before I begin, I would like to mention that the goal of our board development video series is for board members of not-for-profit organizations to have the basic knowledge, skills, and tools to be successful in their work. We realize that some of you are not board members, and that's fine. But we want you to be aware that the information, concepts, and ideas presented are from board member perspectives. Also, the information presented here is aimed at an introductory level or as a refresher for board members to ensure they have the base level of understanding of board governance concepts and principles needed to successfully do their work. We do have other resources that we can share with you, such as our toolkit. There is a link in the description of this video to our toolkit that provides additional resources and links we think are helpful for you and your nonprofit organization as you tackle your governance issues. Included in this toolkit is a copy of the slides we use in this video and all the videos in our board development video series. You can also hit the subscribe button down below and turn the notification on to subscribe to our YouTube channel and get notification about our upcoming videos. The last thing I want to mention before we get going is in this video, we are not providing advice. The information offered in the video and the related materials are not intended to constitute legal advice, the rendering of legal concepts, consulting, or other professional services of any kind. We simply want to share with you information that we think will be helpful for board members as you navigate your organization through its governance and operations. By the end of this video, you'll be able to identify and explain the 9 principles of governance, identify and explain the qualities and skills of a good board member, explain the components of organizational design, and explain how structures and processes can support effective and efficient functioning as an organization. So without further ado, let's get going. I'm going to build on the 4 roles and 7 responsibilities of part 1 video. Along with those 4 roles and 7 responsibilities is also the understanding there are several principles of good governance that boards should represent and reflect in their work. The first one is participation. Everyone should have a voice in decision-making in an organization. Your decisions have an impact on your organization, either directly or sometimes indirectly. It is important that board members actively participate in discussions, meetings, and decision-making. There's also the whole legal framework of rule of law. We talked about rule of law in the Understanding Your Legal Landscape video. It is important for board members to know the legal framework of the organization very well. It's about understanding the external rules that the organization should follow. Incorporation, regulations, other legislation that applies to your organization, such as building codes if you own, utilize a facility, and duty of care, to name a few. And internal rules such as bylaws, policies, procedures, and motions. And how you reflect both those internal and external rules in the work and decision-making of the organization. And you should make sure that they are enforced and that they are being implemented in the organization as well. The next one is transparency. You need to be very clear in your organization. Information should be available to everyone, and if someone asks a question, they should get an answer. There should be a flow of information. Those who are concerned should be able to access information directly and ask questions. You also need to provide enough detail so they can understand the information. People should be able to find the information on your websites and know what your organization is about and know what's happening. The public should be able to find out information from members, board members, and staff, and the information should be very consistent. That way you can really reflect transparency. The next one is responsiveness, and is connected to transparency. Quite simply, if someone asks a question, they should be able to get a timely response. I want to highlight the word timely. The answer should be provided as soon as possible, not 3 or 4 or 5 months later. The edits and responses should also go to all stakeholders, not just a special few. There should also be consensus orientation among the board members. There can be a lot of different interests in your organization. Very typically, there are different perspectives on anything that the board is doing in the organization. And it's important to hear different voices. But the board must also make efforts to reach a consensus among themselves of what is in the best interest of the organization. So while you want to hear the different perspectives, you also want to make sure you are all in agreement on what is the best interest of the organization moving forward. The next one is equity and fairness. Everyone that's part of the organization should be treated with equity and fairness. The opportunities should not be for just a selected few in the organization. Now, if we speak about the larger community, everyone should have the opportunity to benefit from the organization's services within the mandate and the purpose of the organization. Effectiveness and efficiency. Things should be done effectively and timely in the organization. The organization resources should be used effectively and efficiently. You should aim and insist that your organization gets the best results with the best use of resources. Accountability. Not-for-profit decision makers are accountable to the public as well as stakeholders. As a board member, you should know that you are accountable for the decisions, actions, and results of the organization. This is an important concept for a not-for-profit organization. The last principle of good governance is strategic vision. This is about the broad and long-term perspective of where the organization needs to go and how it will get there. If the business and discussions of the board or organization is primarily only about the here and now and or the past, and few if any conversation or decisions are about the future, then this particular principle would not be reflected well. There needs to be a vision and long-term plan for the organization. You should insist that there is a vision in place for the organization that is being updated regularly and includes the goals, the broad steps and processes to move forward to that vision. But it does not end at the 9 principles. Now we're going to move into another area and look at governance more from an individual perspective. Let's take a look at the qualities of good board members. The first one is integrity. One of the most important qualities of a good board member is having and showing integrity. This includes you as an individual board member insisting that your board and organization behaves ethically and do the things that you say you will do. Board members should monitor their own integrity, the integrity of all board members, and the integrity of the entire organization. Courage. Where could a board member display courage? A courageous board member asks tough questions. You should be able to say, I'm not quite sure I understand it completely, or be able to ask, why are we doing this? I have an example for you to show this. There was an organization that was hiring an expensive soccer coach for their junior program. One of the board members felt this was too expensive for something that maybe they could do very well with a volunteer. But that board member did not ask this question or make that comment. So after hiring the coach, the organization went broke. Later, that board member said, I really wish I had the courage to ask that tough question. Why are we spending money on this coach when we probably could have a volunteer do the same thing? This is an example of what might be avoided when board members display courage. Now, for this to happen, there should be an organizational culture that values questions being put forward by members. Good judgment. You focus on the important issues and base your decisions and actions on wisdom, a sound business practice, and common sense. Ask yourself and other board members, does this make sense? Do you think it's a good direction to go? Another quality of a board member is to have perspective. Different board members in an organization have different perspectives. You want this. They should have broad knowledge and experience to apply to discussions and decisions. You don't want to have board members that only see things one way. Your perspective could be new to them. Whatever the topic is, whatever the discussion is, share your perspectives. with good thought and articulate as best as possible. And the last but not least, commitment to learning. Good board members come to the organization with passion to learn new things. Asking questions is a great first step to learning. There are a lot of things you need to know and learn as a board member. Boards often deal with a lot of matters, financials, risk management, legal. There's a lot to learn, fair to say? So you should be committed to learning those things because at the end of the day, you're making decisions and you should be accountable to those decisions. It is your responsibility to make sure you know and learn so that you can contribute to the active oversight of your organization and make good informed decisions. So what are the skills of a good board member? Along with the qualities of a good board member I just presented, there are also skills that board members can learn and apply so the board as a whole can function and work effectively as a team. The first is ability to present an opinion. When board members are able to articulate and present their thoughts clearly, frankly, and constructively, they're more likely to have a positive impact on the discussions and decisions that the board makes. Discussions around the board can be fast and sometimes intense. Pay attention to the conversation so you can understand how your opinion is connected to the ideas that have been discussed. Like anything, if you practice your opinions, you'll get better at it. Willingness and ability to listen. Not everyone knows how to listen. If you are willing to listen, you get better at it and you'll understand what questions to ask and you'll be able to form an opinion about what the speaker is saying. It is important to put aside your personal opinion and bias and listen to what other board members are saying. Instead of listening to the conversation only to get an opportunity to present your own idea, listen to what is being said before. Does that really make sense? Is that in the best interest of the organization? Listening is a very important skill in every situation, especially when you are decision makers in a nonprofit organization. Ability to ask questions. We have said a few times, and I'll say it again, if you don't understand something about what is being said or discussed, ask questions. Here are a few examples. Are you missing information? You can ask. Is there some information that you could share? Could be a question you could ask. Or if you don't know how ideas are connected, just ask, I don't see how this is all connected. Am I missing something? Let's say you don't know about the historical context of a situation. Ask, has this happened in the past? Here's another thing about asking a question. If you're hesitant, and if you do take the risk and ask that question that you have in your mind, then chances are somebody will say after, I'm really glad that you asked that question. I was wondering that as well. Your questions clarify different aspects for the rest of the board. Understanding is happening through the questioning discussion of your board meetings. It shouldn't be avoided or approached with defensiveness, but rather welcome as a key process to good board decision-making. Flexibility. Be open to new ideas and responsive to change. It is important in any work to be flexible and be adaptable to new situations and environments. The world changes and nonprofits, like all other organizations and businesses, need to change and adapt to new situations where they are abrupt changes or gradual changes. Just remember that you need to be flexible to new things and new ways of doing things. Dependability. Do you behave in a way that supports and helps the board? Do you prepare and participate in board meetings? If you're asked to do something, do you actually do it? If you're asked to be on a committee, are you actively involved in doing things then on that committee? Or are you simply there in name? Board members need to be dependable so that the organization can succeed in its work. Ability to think critically, creatively, and strategically. If the board needs to make a decision about a key business item, do you actually take the time to really examine and research it? Do you bring a critical mindset and thinking to the table? Do you look for creative options or new ways to do things? Do you think strategically? not just in the here and now, but also for the future of the organization. As a board member, you want to be bringing all your best thinking to the table in your not-for-profit organization. This is similar to what you would do if it was the work of your day job or your personal business or the decisions you make for your family. Organizational design. In this next section, I'll discuss components of organizational design. In other words, how does the work get done in an organization? We'll take a few minutes to see what those components are, and then we'll see how all these concepts that we discussed in part 1 and 2 of this video are connected. So how do things get done in an organization? Doing what needs to be done in a not-for-profit organization depends on 4 things. The first one is the governance framework. The board sets the governance frameworks and it identifies groups of people that do work for the organization. For example, board, committees, staff, and volunteers. The second one is systems and policies. The board creates systems and policies. These systems and policies describe ways that the groups of people will do their work. If we use committees as an example, systems and policies include what work the committee will focus on, who will be part of the committee, and how it will report to the board. The third one is processes. The processes describe the actions that are needed to accomplish the work. Things like, how are we going to make decisions? How are we going to communicate? Perhaps as an example, how are we going to manage conflict of interest? The last one is organizational culture, mindset, and skills of the board. This last one includes principles of good governance, qualities, and skills of the board and board members. So these are the components of organizational design and how things get done in the organization. But how are they related to the 4 roles and 7 responsibilities of nonprofit or boards? We just briefly described components of organizational design. In Board Roles and Responsibilities Part 1 video, you heard about the 4 roles and the 7 responsibilities of nonprofit boards. With this information in mind, this slide shows what are the components of organizational design. In other words, it says how the work gets done in an organization. Let's take a few minutes to see how everything is connected and how all the roles, responsibilities, and skills and qualities of board members fit into the work of the organization. This will help you understand the different pieces that make up your organization and how they're related. Your board. At the center of the organization is the board of directors. The board has the highest level of decision-making in the organization. The board determines what work will be done in the organization. Only the board has the authority and the responsibility to make decisions on behalf of the organization. So where should the board start? Of all the 4 key roles. When you're thinking about the board and what it should be doing, the 4 key roles of the board are a good place to start. Just a reminder, those 4 roles, first to define and advance the organization's purpose, second to ensure, develop, and conserve resources, then to provide oversight, and the last one is to engage in outreach with stakeholders. If the board is wondering where to start, why not start with these 4 key roles? 7 responsibilities. The 7 responsibilities give you an idea with some detail about what the board should be focusing on. The 7 responsibilities of board members, as you recall, are organizational purpose and planning, awareness of legal responsibilities, creating an ethical culture and practicing good governance, managing risk and liability, financial responsibilities, demonstrating leadership and working as a team, and relationship management. Now, after the board has realized their 4 roles and 7 responsibilities, they need to figure out how the work in the organization should be done. And the first one is the governance framework. The governance framework is a broad view of the organization. In the governance framework, the board needs to describe structures or groups of people that will do the work in the organization. What are some examples of the structures that make up the governance framework? One of them is the type of board positions, the types and use of committees. whether or not the organization has staff in addition to volunteers, and what are the reporting relationships between the board, the staff, and the volunteers. So you have the governance framework in place. Now what? Systems and policies. Systems and policies describe the ways that the structures or groups described in the governance framework can do their work. Let's use the board itself as an example. One of the most important activities of the board is board meetings. The board meeting includes an agenda. The agenda can be the same every time, or it can be adjusted to support the decisions that the board needs to make at any particular meeting. The board decides how many times a year it'll meet, how it will record the meeting minutes, where these minutes will be stored, and how the minutes can be accessed. This is an example of systems and policies that the board puts in place. The board may develop a set of policies for the organization to guide decision-making and ensure consistent decision-making. The next one is processes. This is about what process has the board put in place to support the governance framework and the systems and policies. The board can develop and implement processes or procedures to ensure the systems and procedures are carried out properly. Often there are evaluative processes developed by the board to make sure things are carried out as planned. For instance, decision-making, communication, conflict resolution, and so on and so forth are carried out and are taking place properly in the organization. This is reflecting that stewardship function board members need to have, that you also heard about in video Board Roles and Responsibilities, Part 1. And the last one is organizational culture, mindset, and skills. You can see that the graphic includes organizational culture, mindset, and skills as the border that goes around the entire organization. In part 1 of this video, we discussed a few of the things that make up the culture, mindset, and skills of the organization. We talked about the principles of governance, the qualities of good board members, and the skills of a good board member. Together, these 3 perspectives contribute to the culture of the organization. Organizational culture is an indication of how the individuals on the board have agreed to approach their work and how they want to relate to each other. Some groups can have a wonderful governance framework with some great systems and policies in place as well and processes, but things still don't work. Somewhere the organizational culture, mindset, and skills are likely lacking. Those principles of good governance that I presented earlier are the ones that are missing. Now, if you consider everything that we just talked about, you can see how complex an organization can be. You do not work in a vacuum. Everything works together and everything is related together. But if you are unsure where you start, maybe you need to go back to the various layers and see what you need to do about each of them. This graphic breaks the organization down into different pieces that the board should keep in mind when it does its governance work. But again, remember, whether the organization is big or small, it starts with the board and the 4 roles and responsibilities of the board. The board is the core. It all comes back to the board. So it's important to go back to the beginning when the only thing on the slide was the board. The board is the center of the organization. All these pieces are important for the organization to be able to do its work, and the board is responsible for making them happen. The board is the key. The board continues the work even after the founders are done because they decide that there is a purpose that is worth pursuing, and therefore they're responsible for whatever happens in the organization. So that's it, folks. This brings us to the end of part 2 of our video on board roles and responsibilities. Thank you for watching. Our contact information is on the slide, and they are in the toolkit as well. If you're in Alberta and you have a question, you need further information, or would like to request services, you can contact us through email and phone. You can also access our website to know more about resources and services. And if you want to be informed of our future services and resources, You could add your email address to our subscription form, and you'll receive information about our services and resources as they become available. The link to this subscription form is in the description of the video as well. Thank you. Thank you for your attention, and take care. Stay healthy. Always remember that our communities have so much more because of everything you do. Thank you all, and bye for now.